Very nice. All right, everyone seated. Welcome to, I guess, the last talk for today on this track. I'm glad there's still people here showing up. That's good. People are still awake. And yeah, so what's this about? I'm David from Weaveworks, and I think there's also a couple of people from us here in the audience. And we're mostly known for container networking, but now we branch out into monitoring, and we're also involved with the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, and Prometheus is one of their projects, and we also use it heavily for our own monitoring. So yeah, and naturally we built some tools around it, and I'm going to talk about some of them today. So let's do a quick round of audience participation, keep everyone awake. Who here uses Prometheus? Yeah, that's very good. That's very good. Who uses Prometheus on Kubernetes? Still, all right. Yeah, it's about, I guess, half of the previous ones. Okay, that was just to figure out what the audience is and how quickly I can get over this slide. Just to tell everyone who doesn't know what it is, it's a time series database. It has a really nice dimensional data model that's going to be a bit important later, and it's got a query engine that's quite nice. It's got some built-in visualization that I'm going to go over really quickly, and plenty more stuff that I'm sure you've heard about today. It's open source. It's really easy to install, get started. Just run that Docker command, and you have a Prometheus running that's monitoring itself. And if you then go on your localhost 9090, this is the first thing you'll see, which is the expression browser. So that's kind of the UI that you get just with Prometheus in its vanilla shape. It's got some cool things already. It's got a type ahead for metric names, so that's pretty cool. So we don't really have to remember all of them completely. It's got a chart mode and a table mode. And if you know your data model that you set up to represent your time series quite well, then you're not going to have a hard time, I think. But yeah, if you've forgotten already because you've installed that new Prometheus configuration 2 weeks ago, and you don't remember all the label names, then it's a bit tricky. So, and it can get tedious pretty quickly. They realized this, and they offered another way to look at your Prometheus data, which were console templates. I think that was abandoned pretty quickly, but it still exists, and your Prometheus supports this. This basically allows you to predefine graphs that you want to look at, and Prometheus also comes with a bunch of them. For example, if you just go to that URL up there, consoles Prometheus overview, you get this predefined dashboard. So that's pretty cool, and you can just modify those. So that's also part of the vanilla Prometheus. And if you want to go all dashboard, then I guess eventually you end up at Grafana, which is a full-fledged dashboard solution. It's got all kinds, rows and cells, it's got auto refresh, it's got a template system if you have multiple servers to dynamically generate selectors for you, so that's quite nice. It's got user management, but it needs its own backend, and it's widely adopted and has lots of integrations. So I'm pretty sure here who's using Grafana, just real quick. Yeah, see, it's popular. It's so popular and so easy to add more and more dashboards, right? That people just keep adding them. And who here has more than 10 dashboards on Grafana? Yeah, okay, yeah. So, you can even add more, like programmatically. Just as a little aside, there's a little library we wrote to write out Grafana configurations. That's open source, and that works quite well. It's also documented there under this URL, so you can have a little idea on how that's all set up. And the idea there is always that the dashboards themselves can be treated as code, so you can also version them. So that's quite nice. But I guess where we talk about Grafana, there's also limitations. The most ones surround troubleshooting, and the reason for that is that Grafana is usually only the starting point. Well, the starting point is probably the page or the Slack notification you got, and then you probably look at your Grafana dashboard. And so let's dive a bit more into this debugging story. And let's say we want to look at this little peak down there where the arrow is pointing. What kind of options do you have? I guess you can use some of these zoom in, zoom out kind of things. But sometimes you also forgot, like, all right, what was the query again? So you would click on the edit button, and then you look, okay, well, it's actually a couple of queries. Which one's important now? How can I get out of there? Maybe I want to go to the expression browser. Actually, these links kind of work there. This works in a normal Grafana. You can jump into the expression browser if you click one of those. So that's pretty cool already. But what do you do then? And we've thought about this a lot, I guess, and it's all about exploring the queries to figure out what's really going wrong. Like, the queries are kind of the essential part of troubleshooting, and we also want to compare the time values between what happened now and maybe with the incident time. So we have some kind of we can compare how something's behaved in the past and how it is behaving now. But we also want to document how we go around our troubleshooting, and maybe we want to add notes and share this whole thing with a coworker, and then at some point we want to go home and just hand over the incident for whoever is on call next. So that's quite nice. This whole thing is not a new concept. These kind of documenting things by using code. If anyone has heard of Jupyter notebooks, they're quite popular in this field, where you can basically describe several what you want to program out in several cells, and then add some notes in between. So we kind of took this as a cue also to implement something similar, but for Prometheus. And the important thing is then, how do you get, how's this all done? So the first thing I guess you need to do is you got to get out of Grafana into some kind of notebook, and then we can use the Prometheus API to figure out or like to build your own queries. And I guess the tools that we're going to show, they are all based around just using the API and using for example, the charts library that the vanilla Prometheus is also using. How we can use that to your advantage, basically, and at the same time make a nicer query field. So let's quickly figure out how we can jump out of Grafana. And we tried a bunch of things. We tried Grafana plugins, but plugins only give you full panels or data sources, and we didn't really want to maintain our own graphing panel, because that would be a bit annoying. And but you can use our Chrome extension that we wrote that just analyzes this Grafana page, and then knows, okay, this is a panel that has a graph, and the graph is based on a query. So I can inject some links to your other monitoring system, which for us is Weaveworks, and you can jump there. And so how do those links get there? Browser extension. This is actually this is open source now, so you can fork it, do your own browser extension if you want to use Grafana as your entry and I guess also exit point to get into some other kind of troubleshooting. So this is available now, either in the Chrome store, or you modify if you want to use Weaveworks, or if you want to fork it and build your own jumping links, so to say. So jumping, but where to? Some kind of dashboard, some kind of notebook. We implemented one for Weave Cloud, And this came out of our internal efforts of dog fooding and Prometheus-based monitoring. And the idea there is to use it as a starting point to document an incident. So now the question is, how do we build this? So, because we just built this out. We just build it ourselves, obviously. What makes up a notebook? A notebook is a query field, most importantly. They're pretty central because that's where you enter the queries. And we just decided to go along with a simple query field because by just talking to other developers, nobody really wanted just a click solution and like a click query builder. And we just looked at the original expression browser and what did the field there provide, or tab completion. So that was quite helpful. So we started with that as well, and just imagine it a bit differently, or try to take it a bit further. So PromQL has obviously a set of functions, for example, and keywords. So it's good to also suggest those if you start typing that. So we added that on top, and then just the metric names that are easily available via this URL from your Prometheus installation. So you can just get those and then suggest those. But we wanted to take it one step further, because once you have entered your metric name, and you also want to filter probably by some kind of label. So now the question is, if I start typing the opening curly braces, what should happen next? If I use the Prometheus API to insert the metric name there, then I get back all the labels and all the keys for the labels and all the values. So I can basically construct a suggester that's based around the metric name that came before the curly braces. So that's really just a simple greedy algorithm. I just look at the opening curly braces, what's the metric name to the left. It's really quite simple. So then you get back label keys and values. You can construct a whole tree pretty easy. And then what you end up is you can also look greedily, okay, I just entered a handler key. So what are the labels that match this particular metric with this particular label key? What kind of values does it have? Yeah, that's basically the whole thing. And then this is kind of an implementation detail on how it's done. We're using Draft.js, which came out of Facebook. So if you ever use Facebook, I don't know who does. All the little messaging fields, that's basically written in Draft.js. So we just used it a bit more for this expression syntax highlighting and the suggestions. Yeah, exactly. And what else is missing in the notebook field or table? And then we try to imagine how can we make this Prometheus the values table? How can we make this better? Maybe we just extract all the columns. So we did that, and then what happens if you click on a column name on the column cell? Well, this could actually just mean, okay, maybe I just want to filter by this one. So then that gets auto inserted up there. This is all pretty easy. If you just look at the selection API of the browser, where you are inside the query, it's really just a greedy strategy on figuring out what to insert where. The last thing that's missing is charts. They were built just reusing basically what the vanilla Prometheus UI had. So it's based on Rickshaw, and we really just got the stuff out. The code is basically the same, so you can do something similar if you wanted to build your own Prometheus charts. There's also the last link down there. This is basically how the vanilla Prometheus UI uses the Rickshaw charts to draw the result from the range query. Yep. Okay. So I'm just going to show how this all works together. No, and I'm quickly going to go through the setup. The idea here is that you run your local cluster with some services, and you run your local Prometheus and your local Grafana, and then we run service. We run a hosted Prometheus service for you, where you can send all your data, and the Grafana can also access that data then. So this is what's going to happen. And with a browser extension, we can jump out of the Grafana into the Cloud UI. All right, let's see if that all works together. So. Where am I? There. Okay. I don't know. Maybe I do this with mirroring because that's a bit easier. Just give me 1 second. Alrighty. So. Maximize this one. So this is just the GitHub repo for the browser extension. If you want to have a look at that one, see how it's implemented, and it's installed here. It's somewhere here. So basically, now if I look at a Grafana, the browser extension notices, okay, this is a Grafana. That's pretty cool. Let's insert some links on how or where you want to jump. So I just hit reload. So you can basically see how the links get inserted or not. Oh, this is interesting. Is there Ethernet here? Probably. Because I brought an adapter. Oh, that's good. That's good. Cool. So this is our own system that we obviously monitor, and if you look carefully here in this area, there was nothing there before, and then after the dashboard rendered, those links were inserted. And then you can just jump out of there. So now we can just so it's either then per panel. So I can either start investigating a single panel, or I can just jump into an investigation pre-filled with the whole dashboard. So I'm just going to click on this one here, and then let's see what happens. Yep. So now I've got a complete notebook filled out with a title of the dashboard that I can start renaming. So maybe this was the user service was acting up at KubeCon. Okay. And then you can see all the query fields pre-filled with those queries. And then we also see, okay, we have some of these queries. We actually had multiple, some of these panels from Grafana had multiple queries in them, and they're all put together here. So that is another thing that we added on top, that you can enter multiple queries into a single field, so that they all get displayed together. So that's nice. So now I can just look at all of them, and I can remove some that I think are I don't know, not very important. So this is probably not very important. Well, just have a look. I guess this one here was the most important one. Or, well, there's a bit of movement there. So then I can start documenting this stuff. What happened above. Oh, yeah. Oh, so it noticed now, okay, I'm trying to document this, so it turned into a text mode. What happened above was not nice. Okay, so that's okay. And then I can construct more queries around this. Let's just say HTTP What's always a good one? Maybe this one. Yep. And then I can just look at the I can have a quick look at tables. This is kind of a similar workflow to what you were probably used before, where you try to figure out, okay, like what's the label space for this thing? Oh, this is not very good because the values are all 0. That's why they're all grayed out. Interesting.
Service request directions.
Thank you. Service request. This one. All right, that's already the graph. I guess more important here would be the table, and then you can see, okay, now it extracted all those values into table columns, and I can look, okay, maybe I only wanted a certain route. Let's say I wanted a route trace, and so just by clicking on it, it looked at the query and then figured out, okay, I clicked on a server, I clicked into the result set of a service request duration seconds count query. So I know exactly where to modify the query string, and yeah, that's basically what we implemented. It's pretty straightforward, and yeah, now it's already narrowed down to only 2 rows. Yep. So that's nice. We can do some. Maybe we want to. Maybe you want to. Let's just render this first. Okay, that doesn't look very exciting because it's probably some kind of counter that's obviously increasing all the time. So not very exciting as is, but we probably want to see the rate of increase. So we do a bit of this. I can never remember. Is it outside?
Inside.
Inside. Yeah, PromQL. And let's look at this. Okay, yeah. See, we see a bunch more spikes. That's nice. Maybe we want some finer granularity. No, we probably want a greater one. No, this was probably good enough here. Okay. So and then since we remember, okay, we had 2 of those. Let's just sum them up so that they get rendered together. Okay. Yep. And that was it. And I guess apart from all of these above here, we can probably delete all of those, but we've documented this part down here. So I guess that's what we cared about. Alrighty, that was a demo. And let's just get out of this mode. Back to this. Yeah, so we only started recently working on this. And I've given a version of this talk 2 months ago, and in the meantime, we've figured out all this Grafana stuff. We got multiple cells working and multiple graphs and a values table. So the next step that we're working on, I guess next week's, will be to make them really shareable, so you can share them within your organization if you're Weave Cloud, if you sign up with Weave Cloud. And then there's some syntax tweaks. Because, for example, if you look at that last query there, it's sum by mode. And since we're using some kind of greedy algorithm to the left, maybe here we start to look to the right. Somehow we have to figure out that it was the node CPU metric. So there's lots of little tweaks. All right. So the main takeaways are actually, if you just want to rebuild this on your own, look at your behavior, like where do you get stuck during troubleshooting. You can look for jump points on how to get out of things where you usually get stuck. You can study the API of how other tools are using Prometheus And as I've shown, it's not really that hard. And you probably also find ways to make, like to take it a step further, right? So, and especially if you're a backend engineer, it's not really, you don't really have to be afraid of the front end. Like you can just build something similar. Yeah, and there's always Elm, you know, so. All right. We're not hiring, no, just kidding. In any of these locations. And yeah, the backend of this is open source, Cortex. For the front end, it's still under heavy development. We haven't really figured out how to extract the nice part, like the query builder, out into an open source component, but that may come. Other than that, I encourage you to configure your Prometheus to point it towards cloud or Weaveworks, and then you can use the tooling. Yep, I think that's it. Yeah, any questions? Yep.
How long do you have block retention for the stuff that is in Weave Cloud?
So that is virtually infinite because we're using S3 buckets. So basically as much as Amazon gives us, so to say. Yeah.
As much as I'm willing to pay, because what I was thinking was I want my incidents documented like forever to share with colleagues to look back.
Yeah, no, yeah, I think that's exactly the use case we're trying to address here. Yeah. So it's, yeah, they're going to be there for like until AWS phases the heat death, basically. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you get a lot more features there because we can then the Cortex, this Cortex version is a scalable version of Prometheus. So you can get parallel queries, and then especially if they're a bit longer back in time, or if they span a lot of time, the query times are a lot faster than a vanilla Prometheus because they can be parallelized. Yep. Yeah. Pardon? We run it where? Yeah, so the user interface, not yet, but we're thinking about how to make an on-prem version for this. This Cortex, you can run it yourself. If you want to solve your multi-tenancy problem that you may have from your own Prometheus, then Cortex may be the answer. Yeah, you should check that out. All right, thanks.